fratelli, care sorelle,
Dear
piacere prendere
brothers and sisters,
questa volta
it's with great pleasure
del quale mi posso
that I've taken the floor the second time. I'm going to hold my lecture in Italian
all'ultima.
because I used English in the plenary,
Penso che per i traduttori anche
and
sarà un po' più difficile il lavoro. Li ringrazio tantissimo.
because my text was not
Il tema che
translated, most probably the interpreters will have a hard time, so I'll try to speak slowly.
motivato dalle discussioni.
What is my subject? We're experiencing major problems in the Amazonian communities in terms of access to Eucharistic celebrations and a lack of priests, and
Uomini sposati.
related to
Per questo
proposals.
deciso di incentrare la riflessione proprio sulla questione.
For example, that married men should be involved in the priesthood to ease the shortage of priests.
Il territorio dell'Amazzonia ha 5.500.000 chilometri quadrati.
I'd like to give you some facts and figures. The territory of the Amazon basin
Teniamo in
is
considerazione
larger than half of Europe,
10 milioni di chilometri.
5 millions and millions of inhabitants.
Il territorio dell'Amazzonia occupa
Obviously, Europe has a larger population.
il territorio nazionale del Brasile.
Currently, Amazonia covers 57% of the territory of the country. The Amazon Brazil actually extends to Ecuador, Venezuela, and other countries.
Nazionale, no? Come si dice?
That is where the next Eucharistic Congress is going to be held, then Bolivia, Suriname, and French Guiana. But 60% of it can be found in Peru.
100% nel
So most of the Amazon basin, 60% of it,
capisce che
is in Brazil, 13% in Peru, and the rest is divided
più di
amongst the other countries. So the church in Amazonia means basically the Church of Brazil. So more than 10 years ago, the conference
questa
set up a special commission to tackle problems in Amazonia. They tried to assemble bishops
degli sussidi
to help them meet the current challenges,
per aiutare le chiese
probably through monetary, financial aid, amongst other means, so
sono state alcune
as to support the church in this area. In Brazil, a collection of funds
con dei ministri
have been held, but this council or this committee mostly helps ordained and not ordained or unordained priests, that is, whoever may contribute to liturgy and church activities to overcome these difficulties. First,
di risorse economici, ma anche di personale.
we turned to the southern regions, which are richer, for help, and then we turned to northern Amazonia in an attempt to raise funding. There's another important project of ours. In Italy, it means community and
1% di tutto quello
distribution, and 1% of all monies coming in will be spent on financing this particular project.
la grande parte dell'Amazzonia. È stato
It's a continuous flow of these sums representing 1% of all income. The decision was taken by the Brazilian Council of Bishops,
ecclesiale, si chiama
and it's all in the spirit of community and distribution. Also, we've set up a pan-Amazonian network of priests, but it's not just Amazonia, it covers other areas covered by jungle, primeval forest. And this great effort is being expended, and the fruits
Panamazzonica, un organismo
visible. For example, the Pan-American Church Conference has been established. This we'd like to treat as a standard board. It's not a board of bishops, but we have invited people from all walks of life. And this institution,
di circolazione molto restretta, come
this institution
ha assunto la sinodalità
first faced serious difficulties, but little by little it was able to meet the challenges to tackle which it had originally been established. I don't want to hold you up at length by reading up my text, but I need to come back to colonial times, i.e. when Europeans arrived in South America, where there had been church organizations before, but later on the missionaries and Christians added or contributed to, and especially the Council of Trent did a lot, acting as a kind of a patron
dalla corona portoghese e l'applicazione
of the church in that area, and did a great deal to implement the Council's decisions. Gradually, more and more ground was taken by the church, but before that, some lay organizations, brotherhoods, had been much stronger. There were a high number of such organizations, but slowly these were amalgamated within the clergy. But the clergy was often unable to come to terms with these brotherhoods, were unable to handle this situation, and it gave rise to serious problems. It took a long time. Catholicism had to face serious challenges, which steps were taken, or what initial difficulties there had been. In my text, I write about changes in culture, art, and theology. After all, all this is linked with globalization. Today, the economic aspect is paramount. There's horrendous poverty in this area. And I'm not skipping this because it's not important, because I'd like to talk to you about even more burning issues. You know that this is a developing country, and it's far more backwards in industrial development and industrial development as compared to other developed countries. We're lacking in technology, and so poverty is increasing, especially in the indigenous population, who often have to leave their home areas and land in the on the peripheries of towns, and are plunged into very, very difficult situations. So the local bishops try to cooperate, to share views and try to find joint solutions to these issues. The latest such gathering took place in 2016. It was a kind of a special gathering. I was secretary to that meeting. I was not invited to hold a lecture, but I took the minutes. And so I listened to many lectures and colloquia. I'd like to talk a bit about communities who are lacking Eucharistic celebrations. There are thousands of communities where
milioni di persone.
With a total population of over 200 million people who have no access to priests. There are about 27 priests in Brazil, so on average, this means one priest for every 8,000 people. But if we look at the territorial distribution of priests, this is very varied. I could not find updated information about the Amazon basin. Many people are left without priests, so Pope Francis wrote a document entitled Dear Amazonia, and this piece says that even though there are priests in or from Amazonia, but many of them work in Europe or the United States, whereas there are hardly any priests in Amazonia. And I'm quite sure that the Pope knows best, because he's got the most reliable information. So a lack of priesthood in the basin actually has its effect on the surrounding areas. And I repeat, the distribution is far from being uniform, because in this area we have a large number of isolated communities in the jungle, living along rivers, and these long distances represent the primary reason why these communities cannot have access to the Eucharist. In the south, where I live, for example, Rio de Janeiro, there are about 8 million people, and
più o meno 600 sacerdoti.
There are about 600 priests. That means about 13 faithful per one priest. But not all 600 are active priests. Some have other engagements, other jobs. So you can imagine that there are certain parishes
Il clero di San Andrea
where the shortage is even worse. Sant'Andrea is a suburb of Sao Paulo. It's bigger than Rio de Janeiro, with 18 million people in Sao Paulo,
milioni.
and the diocese numbers 13 million people.
Il sacerdote mi diceva che nella sua parrocchia c'erano
And one priest there told me that in his own parish he's got over 100,000 people, so many that over weekends several priests have to join forces to meet the challenge.
quelli con caratteristiche di sette, molto piccole, con delle mentalità.
Many communities act a bit like
Allora,
sects, anti-Catholic, fundamentalists, organizations exist. So priests
preparati,
need to be very well prepared, and some of them are Lutherans, and there are some who received some improvised training. So it's very difficult to celebrate the Eucharist. It's not only about rite. The rite is important, of course, but the ecclesial significance of the Eucharist is what is at stake.
moltissimi milioni, mila comunità, più di 1.000, 2, 3.000, 4.
Over several thousand communities in Brazil can be found which have no access to a Eucharistic celebration, whether Sundays or any time. Maybe once a year or even 2 years go by without the Eucharist. And that alone is because of a lack of priests. These communities gather every Sunday to listen to the gospel, to hear the gospel,
le diocesi
read out maybe by a lay person.
per la riflessione, fanno la preparazione di queste persone.
Then there's joint meditation sessions, and they take part in the rites, always conducted by lay people.
L'Eucaristia non ce l'hanno. Però quando parliamo dell'Eucaristia,
But Eucharistic celebration is non-existent there,
ministri straordinari,
only very, very infrequently. These people
parrocchia distante l'Eucaristia per avere la comunione eucaristica nel contesto della celebrazione della
bring the Eucharist along with them from their own parish on certain Sundays when they have
del calore, la conservazione
and take the Eucharist to these localities. But again, the long distances, the heat, high humidity make life very difficult for them. Nevertheless, they do go there and try to provide help to the lay church people in these isolated places. There are
poche. Papa Francesco ha ribadito la necessità di formare diaconi permanenti in quella zona. Ma
There are very few dioceses and prelates where we can find deacons.
però riprendo, quando si parla della Eucaristia non si parla solo della comunione eucaristica,
Talking about the Eucharist, it's not only about the Holy Communion,
anche i testi tradizionali.
but holding a Mass itself, according to our tradition.
Martinelli ha ricordato qui molto bellamente, ma anche i testi
Bishop Martinelli just spoke about.
dell'Eucaristia e sua relazione
But
con
the Second Vatican
celebrazione
Council
della Eucaristia.
regulations also come to play here.
Chi fa
When we talk about this,
chiede l'Eucaristia?
we ask ourselves the question, who leads the Eucharistic celebration? It should be the priest. But when we take the fundamental texts, there's an unavoidable part
Vuol dire la Chiesa presente.
saying that the Church must be present in the Eucharistic celebration.
Siano piccole, povere,
That is quite clear.
dispersione, dice
But these communities are poor and small and scattered.
la Chiesa di Cristo è presente.
It's kind of a diaspora.
Cristo stesso
And although the Church of Christ is there and is active, Christ is there
nella comunione dell'altare, nella celebrazione,
and is present
nell'assemblea.
in these different
Allora la
communities
risposta è clara e unanime.
and also in Eucharistic celebrations. So we have a standard answer.
È la Chiesa che si rende.
But in our traditions,
Ma c'è anche un
the
principio.
leaders of the parishes should celebrate the Eucharist, should say Mass.
Il cristianesimo, come si ricava per esempio nei testi di San Ignazio,
Since the very first years of Christianity, as St. Ignatius
chi
of
presiede
Antioch says,
presiede anche l'Eucaristia.
he who leads the community should celebrate the Eucharist.
Al suo vescovo, il suo presbiterio e qualche.
So it is clearly stated that you have a priest and some deacons.
Nella carta ai Filippesi. Non può mai essere
And one of them celebrates the
vescovo, come scrive.
the Eucharist, and the Eucharist cannot be celebrated without the priest.
Al fine della prima apologia,
This is what St. Ignatius writes. St. Justinius, in his first apology, writes clearly
presiedere la Eucaristia. Quel che presiede i fratelli presiede anche la Santissima
that
Eucaristia.
the leader of the brethren will celebrate the Eucharist after reading
La memoria degli Apostoli
the text from the Bible, and then the homily
di grazie
is to be held by the leader of the community.
su De Corona Militis, nel numero 3.
Tertullianus,
Il sacramento
in
dell'Eucaristia
his work,
non li riceviamo dalle mani di nessun tranne di quelli che ci presiedono. Regola generale.
states that we receive the Eucharist from the leader of the community. This was communicated already in the first centuries of the Church.
Per i ministri ordinati. Quando i presbiteri cominciarono a presiedere l'Eucaristia è una questione
So there is someone in the community whose position cannot be challenged, and this is to be understood as that someone leads the entire community in different regions, in different territories.
alcuni dicono che
There was some approximation to Rome, but in the fourth century, Zenonata
ragione, ma negli storici del cristianesimo antico ci sono
the
affermazioni.
historian, I am not an authority in this, but the early Christians
Della presidenza dell'Eucaristia,
believed it's the leader of
sottolineato
the president of the community who should celebrate the Eucharist. The second
Santum Concilium numero 26.
Council of the Vatican emphasized that as well. If we Sacrosanctum Constitutum, we say that these are not private acts, but the sacraments of the Church,
Il Concilio Tridentino.
and they unite under the leadership of the bishops. This is how
E anche del carattere
the Council of Trent decided on its issue on the Holy Mass.
di qua divengono
So, in Sacrosanctum Concilium makes it clear that
maggiormente fa questione di sottolineare anche. Il primo,
the Mass should be celebrated jointly and lay people should have limited activities.
ministro o fedele, nel sviluppo delle sue funzioni, devono fare tutto e solo quello che per la natura delle cose o per le
The faithful
liturgiche gli competono. Per esempio, Sacrosanctum Concilium 28.
have a clearly defined role to play, which is described in details in point 28, and according to liturgical rules, and they should do all of them. Ministers, choir, and so on, actually perform a liturgical service. It's point 29, and then it continues.
Soprattutto sottolineo il numero 30 del Sacrosanctum Concilium, incluso prevedendo che le rubriche
Described under 30.
prevedono questo numero 31 del Sacrosanctum Concilium.
And also the role of the individuals involved in literature, they are clearly defined. Well, probably these are the most important ones, and I've quoted more than enough from the Second Council of the Vatican to remind us all that the Council clearly defined these matters.
Si può citare il numero 32 e altri numeri.
I would quote chapter 12 on the distinction between the individuals involved in the liturgy. And these were all accepted, all these principles accepted by the Second Council of the Vatican.
Ministeriale con carattere di servizio, di ministero.
And then it was clearly defined that the dignity of all of us is clear, is equal.
Ordinato per la celebrazione dell'Eucaristia, 26a, anche il 28. In una parola,
27, well, from this follows that the preference for communal celebration, the principle according to which in liturgical celebration each one minister of faithful the performance of its function does all the only that which by the nature of the thing or by the liturgical norms incumbent upon him, which is the exact quote from 25, the recognition that those who serves at the altar, the readers, commentators, and the element of the choral group exercise authentic liturgical ministry, 29.
molto generalmente.
The promotion of the typical expression of the active participation of the faithful, acclamations, responses, psalmody, antiphons, hymns, as well as action, gestures, and bodily attitudes, which is 30, even making provision for them, is in the rubric of the new liturgical books, 31. The disallowance of any deference to person in the liturgy, the use of the vernacular. Evidently, in order to find its full theological legitimation, the principle enunciated in Sacrosanctum Concilium 26 had to be articulated as its natural contents with the whole renewal of ecclesiology. In fact, it is not enough to say that the liturgy is a celebration of the Church. It is necessary to satisfy that the Church is a unitary reality, mystery of communion, people of God, sacrament, and that all the members should share being in building in her mission.
Numero 81.
And now reference is made to the 63, which the interpreters have a hard time in finding the text. In that context,
Sacerdozio di Cristo.
the second Council of Vatican says everyone has to play a role, but the distinction is made with the lay, man participants, and the priests.
Estrae una conclusione di ripensamento dei ministeri.
Point 85 in the same document.
Qualche righe. Una priorità è definire i contenuti,
and this is
metodi,
quoted.
attitudini per se
Therein lies the foundation of the liturgical reform, which aims, on the one hand, to restore truth to the celebration, and on the other hand, to promote the participation of the faithful. It is the Ecclesia itself understood in the line of the Fathers as
nuovi ministeri
the way of Christians. Lumen Gentium in turn developed a particular vision of the pilgrim church as the people of God, according to which, even if
della comunità.
by the will of Christ, some of the Christian teachers, dispensers of mysteries, and shepherds for the benefits of others, nevertheless, among all there reigns a true equality for the regard to the dignity and action common to all the faithful in the building of the body of Christ, for the distinction which the Lord has made between sacred ministries and the rest of the people of God brings about a true union among them. In this context,
Promuovere
1011, Lumen Gentium and the common priesthood in its expression on its sex and its respective become fully relevant. The liturgy, therefore, especially the celebration of the Eucharist, belongs to the whole body of the Church, manifest in its implies. However, one should not fear that this means an annulment of ministerial distinctions. In fact, each member of the community participates in the same liturgical actions according to his own status and eventual ministerial function. Although new methods need to be introduced in order that I have a closer access to the
delle domande anche
Christian life. This is what the Synod's document outlines.
può essere controllata nella terza parte.
It's very important to listen to the voice of the Amazonian people in the preparatory documents, part 3. Then the Synod got together and let us see the closing document
Cara Amazzonia, come la questione
and the exhortation of the Pope.
finale del Sinodo votato per i vescovi. Nella sessione intitolata L'Eucaristia, fonte e apice della comunione
In
sinodale,
which he describes in 13 points
genericamente l'insegno del Vaticano II con riferimento alla partecipazione nell'Eucaristia come fonte e culmine di tutta la vita cristiana, segno dell'unità del corpo.
It's very important to make a distinction between the roles that can be played only by the priests and others which are not that essential. Also,
Per tutti, tra virgolette, numero 109.
the Eucharist needs to be accessible to everyone. This is what point 109 describes.
Posto nell'economia della salvezza, 110. In riferimento a questo, enfoca le difficoltà
It is in this number 111 that appreciating the celibacy positively the functionality it offers for the full dedication of priests to the service of the people of God. It does it.
questi numero 111 fa un apprezzo positivo
The closing document recalls what the
del celibato, la possibilità di dedicazione piena.
so in that section entitled Eucharist, Source and Summit of Synod Communion, the final document generally recalls the teaching of the Second Vatican Council concerning participation in the Eucharist as the source and summit of the whole Christian life, the symbol of the unity of the mystical body and the center of the whole life of the Christian community. It then moves on to work onto the idea of the more fundamental rights of access to the Eucharist for all. He considers that his right derives from the essence of the Eucharist and is placed to the economy of salvation, page 110. In this regard, he focused on the difficulties of many ecclesial communities to have access to the Eucharist in the Amazon territory. In this number 111, that appreciating celibacy positively in the functionality, it offers for the full dedication of priests to the service of the people of God. It asks that married men be ordained. The text has details that are worth quoting, considering that legitimate diversity does not harm the community and unity of the Church, but rather manifest and serves which attest that the plurality of existing rights and disciplines. We propose to establish criteria and disposition on the part of competent authority with the framework. On the point 112,
Cito la sessione.
he says that there may be
Prendendo in considerazione
people who are married.
non so com'è la parola italiana per pregiudica, no? Sì, c'è, pregiudica. La comunione è l'unità della Chiesa, ma la manifesta e la serve, che è attestato dalla pluralità dei riti e discipline esistenti. Proponiamo stabilire criteri.
Given the plurality of the rites, we need to find criteria based on which
per ordinare sacerdoti a uomini.
we propose to establish criteria and dispositions on the part of the competent authority, the Framework of Lumen Gentium 26, for ordaining priests to men who are suitable and recognized by the community, who have a fruitful permanent diaconate and receive an adequate formation for the priesthood, being able to have a legitimately constituted and stable family, to sustain the life of the Christian community through the preaching of the word and the celebration of the sacrament in the most remote areas of the Amazon region. In this regard, some have expressed themselves in favor of the universal approach to this question. There are 7 criteria altogether highlighted in this document. It is clear that the proposal to ordain deacon priests with the fruitful exercise of the ministry and to satisfy other criteria such as recognition of the community, adequate formation, and other maintenance and more circumstantial to act in the most remote areas in the Amazon regions. Some have abstained from voting.
Raggiunti quasi la totalità dei presenti. Si tratta di
And after all, this proposal was not accepted, although it was fairly clear.
con esercizio fecundo.
The priest, the deacons, deacon priests.
Criteri. Cosa ha risposto Papa Francesco a questa domanda? Nella cara Amazzonia, la risposta del
should receive help and assistance. And what was the response?
del ministero e, altra sessione, comunità piene di vita. Si tratta di un insieme di 13 numeri con diversi elementi.
The Pope's response in his apostolic exhortation, Dear Amazonia, is found in the section entitled The Inculturation of Ministry and Communities Filled with Life. It is a set of 13 paragraphs with several highly significant elements. The starting point is the affirmation of the possibility of inculturating ministry. This is done in analogy with the inculturation of other aspects of Christians' lives, such as spirituality, holiness, of the gospel itself. Aspects of the Amazon reality that, according to the Pope, call for its inculturation are the territorial dimensions, the difficulty of access to some places, cultural diversity, serious social problems, and the choice of some people to isolate themselves. We have 127 different languages and different cultures coming with it. Serious social problems and the isolation of peoples. The Pope says all these exist. Considering this, he concludes, this cannot leave us indifferent, demanding us, repeating, this cannot leave us indifferent, demanding a specific and courageous response from the Church. This is in paragraph 85. In paragraph 86, he emphasizes it is necessary to ensure that the ministry is configured in such a way that it is at the service of a greater frequency of the celebration of the Eucharist, even in the most remote and hidden communities. But he stresses one condition. At the same time, there is a need for ministers who can understand from within the sensitivity and cultures of Amazonia.
È una ragione di motivo culturale antropologico profonda. Nel numero seguente, 87,
And this includes anthropological culture as well. In the next section, a very specific contribution comes from the elements that the Pope indicates for discerning the situation. In paragraph 87 said it's important to determine what is more specific to the priest,
specifico del
what cannot be delegated. The answer lies in the sacrament of holy orders,
La risposta
which configures him
l'ordine sacra,
to Christ the priest. It clearly indicates what the specific tasks are. The first of these is that he alone is qualified to preside at the Eucharist in virtue of the exclusive character received in holy orders.
ricevuto.
Of this qualification, the Pope states this is his specific principle and non-delegable function. He then moves on to the same exclusivity for presiding at the sacrament of penance and shows the correlation between these two sacraments. Sacramentum of forgiveness is at the service of a worthy Eucharistic celebration. He concludes the exposition of traditional doctrine in this question with a clear and simple statement.
In questi due sacramenti
In those two sacraments lies the heart of their exclusive identity.
nella sequenza volve
In the following, he returns to the reality of the Amazonia and affirms that it is necessary to find a way to assure this priestly ministry.
questo ministero sacerdotale.
In point 80 under 89. The indication
Dà alcune indicazioni.
The indication he gives in this regard are to share with the laity actions related to the proclamations of the word, teaching, organizations of communities, celebration of some sacraments. But he reaffirms the need that these communities served by them live for the celebration of the Eucharist.
L'assistenza ecclesiale del matrimonio.
He cites in this regards the affirmation of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the Eucharist makes the Church, and
Per la celebrazione dell'Eucaristia.
that the Presbyterium ordains according to which no Christian community is built up without having its root and center on the celebration of the most holy
Poi il numero 6.
Eucharist, which is point 1396.
La cristiana si edifica senza avere la sua radice e il suo centro nella
On these bases, he again affirms,
due indicazioni.
if we truly believe that things are so, it is urgent to see
Che le cose sono così
to it that the Amazonian peoples are not deprived of the food of new life and of the sacrament of
da nuova
forgiveness.
del perdono. Ma in vista di questo, lui dà alcune indicazioni.
In view of this, he exhorts the bishops to some specific actions to promote prayer for priestly vocations,
Il numero 90
to send young people who show a missionary vocation to Amazonia, and to review formation in order to form
sacerdotali.
attitudes that enable dialogue with Amazonian
Compartire con
cultures.
sacerdoti
And
o anche
those who
vocazionati
travel to the Amazonia should also be
di essere formati,
accompanied by
imparare non solo la filosofia e la teologia, ma anche la
protectors.
cultura locale e il modo di vivere.
They don't just go there, just to learn the local cultures. They know how these people live.
Di carattere anche spirituale, ma piuttosto missionario, invio di giovani o di sacerdoti. Nel numero
In 92, he reiterates the importance that the multiple responsibilities in the life of communities
da diaconi
be assumed by deacons, members of the consecrated life and laymen and women, and that there be adequate accompaniment.
Santo Padre, nell'esortazione apostolica,
So it is not only a matter of facilitating a greater presence of ordained ministers who can celebrate the Eucharist. This would be a very limited goal if we, and the journalist asked him why, and he gave very simple answers. This is because, and this is in the book that he published in the first months of the pandemic.
il libro perché è stato organizzato da Austin Iverish. Il libro si chiama in italiano
It was written by Austin Iverish.
Per conoscere bene il pensiero di Papa Francesco, io considero
Let us dream again, says Pope. I would encourage all of you to read that book. Let us dream again.
Qual è la risposta data da
And let us pray together again.
prima?
So what is Paul's response?
Ha elaborato un vero e proprio discernimento, ha detto lui. È stato
The Synod did not give quite clear-cut instructions.
un vero e proprio discernimento.
It was a very rich, made a council rich in ideas, but without a clear-cut
Che sono
conclusion.
fuori. Dopo la
Based on the reactions we have received after the publication of Dear Amazonia,
alcune reazioni troppo polarizzate che per lui non aveva quel sapore spirituale proprio del risultato.
the question of the access of Amazonian communities to the celebration of the Eucharist, as can be concluded from the documents analysis, received a very clear and articulate proposal from the Special Assembly of the Synod Bishops. The proposal was not accepted by the Synod of Exhortation,
Teologia del
Dear
Consiglio
Amazonia.
II. Un rinnovamento
More than an immediate solution, the Pope indicated elements that should receive adequate attention and be promoted within a deeper and more mature process consideration of life Catholic communities in that territory.
quando sono stato messo insieme
The,
abbiamo la risposta
the Second
di Papa Francesco.
Council of Vatican should be remembered,
Che ho condiviso con voi,
and I believe that Pope Francis also
conferenza prometteva,
himself indicated how important that is. I may not have given
queste riflessioni sono ricchissime e
answers to all the questions. That is the title of the conference, which is so. But I believe that also simply by raising these questions, it has been a worthwhile exercise.
per celebrare
I believe that the meeting where
l'istituzione della commissione
Pope Francis
met l'anno precedente
and the 50th anniversary of
e nel discorso del
that body, and its
lui dice
the protocol has not been published.
senza
And
citazione
in December 2019,
un viva vocis. Lui dice
he refers to that document, but he did not quote himself.
discutete con coraggio, cercate le
We
soluzioni
understand that he encourages us to talk about how
state
the
parlando
evangelic exercise could be continued.
molti
But when you are not among yourselves, you should be very
solo si serve l'acqua limpida.
careful that the people of God can be nourished if the water given to them is
di aver ascoltato parlando
is clear. This is what
signor Martinelli,
Pope Francis proposes.
Baltasariano quasi.
Thank you very much for listening to me.